Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop. My name is Tom Moore. I'm the host of the Morning Scoop. We are a daily podcast affiliated with the new website BuckeyeScoop, which is launching Thursday. We will be here every Monday through Friday for you to give you kind of a quick update on what's going on in Ohio State athletics. We'll be talking football, basketball, recruiting, whatever else is going on at any given time. Today, the news of the day for us is the launch of BuckeyeScoop.com. So I am pleased to be joined by two gentlemen on the staff who you probably know, Bill Greene and Marc Givler. Both of them have covered the Buckeyes and particularly recruiting for years. Marc, let's start with you. Can you just share a little bit about how the BuckeyeScoop.com site came to be?
Yeah, so it's kind of been a running joke, I think, on the especially on the recruiting end of things about how, we should all just team together and start a site, and it just never seemed to line up properly. Someone's contract wasn't up, or, it didn't make sense for another person. They were, perfectly content with their situation. And so it never quite could line up perfectly. And I know Bill and I talked about it often, kind of working together. And this spring, it just kind of did. We started talking about Bill's future. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do. I was kind of at a crossroads where I was at and just kind of wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And we started to talk about it, and then I started to kind of do some research. Okay, what do we need? What type of startup costs are we talking? Can I find a guy who could do the website? And Kirk ended up having a great contact on the website. So it just kind of evolved from a discussion to this might actually be possible. And then, towards the end of, I guess maybe April-ish, we started to really believe that this was definitely going to happen. I mean, maybe there was a brief hesitation there over the COVID shutdown, but once we saw how people were really just enthusiastic about sports coming back, and they were on our message boards where we were both at, and the traffic was not slowing down. In fact, it was probably higher than normal given the time of year, because we kind of realized that people maybe need us more than ever now as they want to talk about sports and kind of have something to look forward to. So it just kind of came together that way, and I'm sure Bill can kind of take it from there on kind of what his personal feelings were on his end of things, but that's kind of how I viewed it.
Yeah, for me, we have talked about this forever, and I never really took it seriously because I knew I wasn't going to do all the legwork, and I knew I never was going to put out the cash outlay to get it going. So it was going to take somebody else doing it. And, Marc did the work. Marc took the bull by the horns. Kirk with a ton of help, and those two, they kept either calling me or texting me throughout the whole thing. And I never really believed it was going to come to fruition until it kind of came to fruition. And, then once I saw that there actually was going to be a Buckeye Scoop, and, I knew I was headed to, free agency or retirement or semi-retirement, or I knew I wasn't going to go back and do what I'd been doing for the past, 15 years. I just wasn't interested in that anymore at my age, at this time. And then, as we really started talking brass tacks, and, I could see where Marc was going in terms of the talent he and Kirk were looking to acquire and acquiring. And it was like, my gosh, this is going to be the most amazing website ever, in the Ohio State market in terms of the quality and the quantity. And, we have such a great staff here that it just lined up perfectly for me. And when they explained to me what they were looking for me to do, everything they would like me to do ended up being the things that I enjoy most and things that I think I do best. So it was almost just a perfect storm. And, I just credit Marc and Kirk and thank them for inviting me to be a part of this. And I am really, really excited. I kind of got bogged down a little bit the past, 6 months or so. My mother did pass away in December, and that was a blow. And I just feel rejuvenated and, pumped up and just raring to go.
You guys have mentioned the name Kirk a couple times. Kirk is Kirk Barton, the former Ohio State offensive lineman who was a captain and All-American under Jim Tressel in the mid-2000s. But Kirk is not the only person on staff. Mark, can you kind of run us through who else is joining BuckeyeScoop.com and what you're expecting them to bring to readers and listeners?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we've got a great team. I knew it was going to be important to get a good beat writer. Yes, recruiting sells. Yes, that drives maybe message board discussion. But ultimately, to be taken seriously as a website and as a media entity, you have to have a real beat writer. You have to have a journalist. And we are big fans of Tony Gerdeman. He's funny. He's kind of got that quick wit to him. He gets recruiting. He gets message boards. He gets Twitter. He just kind of understands the whole business. And when I found out that we actually could get him, because I had no idea, I kind of reached out to him as I was stepping away from my previous spot, and I wasn't sure what he would tell me, but he was pretty interested by the idea and kind of gave me the old, need to talk to my wife, make sure she's not going to kill me for doing something like this, a startup. And, it was a pretty quick process. Within about a week, I think we both knew this was going to happen. I think the one that kind of fell into our lap was Alex Gleitman. We assumed that when I resigned that Alex would either ascend to my position or he would at least get some type of package from rivals to basically take care of him better and that would be that. But as it turns out, he was also very intrigued about what we were doing. He immediately called myself and Bill after I had kind of sent him a note that I had resigned and, had a bunch of respect for him and was wishing him the best. And we started talking a little bit about that. And before you know it, that came together. So it's been crazy. And then you throw in Mick Walker, who I keep referring to as our 5-star prospect. He's going to help Bill, Alex, and myself with recruiting. I see him everywhere. I see him at a camp in Indianapolis. I see him at a basketball thing in Dayton. I see him at a football game in Pataskala. It's just crazy. I see him everywhere. He's one of the hardest working young guys I've seen come through the business. And, then of course we have to mention you, Tom, because you were kind of, I think probably the last official addition to the staff. I had talked to Tony about you, and again, with you, it was more of a thing of we didn't know, everyone kind of had to do what was best for themselves in this situation, and as all these dominoes were falling, I wasn't sure if, you were just going to stay with the Ozone or kind of how that was all going to play out for you with Tony's departure and kind of the gap that was going to create. And as you and I started talking and, it was incredible. It was like all the things you do well are like, oh, well, we need that. We need a photographer. We need a podcast guy. We need someone to help Tony cover the team. And it was just amazing kind of how that all went. And, I'm trying not to miss anybody here. Ross Fulton's maybe the biggest get for us in terms of what he brings to the table. As I've kind of posted on Twitter here with my kind of why I'm here thing, I feel like, if you're a recruiting fan, maybe you like Bill, maybe you like Alex, maybe you like me, maybe you like Jeremy Birmingham. I mean, there's several people who do that who I think do it well, and that you can, have kind of your different flavor. Everyone can kind of say, well, I like that guy's style, or I like that guy's style. And it's the same way on the beat, Tony Gerdeman and Dan Hope and Austin Ward and all those guys, it's just kind of a personality thing, in terms of who you like better and who you like to follow more. But there's only one Ross Fulton, and there's only one Nevada Buck. And so we got two guys who really are not duplicated in this market, and Nevada's not duplicated anywhere. I've been in this business for more than 10 years. I have access to every message board in the Rivals network during those 10 years. I pay very close attention to the business, and he is a total phenomenon. There is not another person like that in the business, that on any other, not let alone Ohio State market, just anywhere, that draws the attention, and the people perk up when he makes a message board post. So I am just over the moon about this. When I started doing this, I thought we'd have maybe 4 or 5 guys, and I thought we'd kill it. And we have 9, and we might have some interns coming too. So look out for that.
I remember the first time we talked about this as a potential possibility, and you started running through the names that were affiliated with the site. There were no people that were like, who's that? I don't know who that is. It was Bill Greene. Like, oh yeah, everyone knows Bill Greene. Ross Fulton. Yeah, everyone knows Ross Fulton. Alex Gleitman. Yeah, everyone knows Alex Gleitman. And, Tony Gerdeman, obviously, I've worked closely with for a number of years. You go down the list, and it's like, oh yeah, those are guys, all of whom are right at the top of the list for what they do. So yeah, the opportunity to be a part of something like this it did not take much deciding to sign up to be a part of a team like this. You had mentioned earlier some of the uncertainty with the timing and all of this, that this has been an unusual year to say the least, and there's been a lot of things up in the air with college football, and students are not on campus right now, and the spring football got canceled. But for as bizarre and unusual as this year has been in a lot of ways, the timing for the site launch is actually just about perfect. We're on track to launch the site Thursday this week, and then next Monday is when Ohio State football players are scheduled to come back to campus and start doing workouts, and they're going to be a little bit unusual. They're going to be doing them in smaller groups, not quite the usual way, but the timing in a year like this, that's just about perfect timing. So, Bill, I guess we'll ask you, when you look at Ohio State players coming back to campus and what they've been working through over the last couple months, where do you think this leaves Ohio State as compared to other teams in the nation who've also had to work through the same kind of remote workouts and all of that kind of thing?
To me, the key to what has gone on from when they shut down, all the spring camps were down, spring football ended at the same time for everyone, and football is going to pick back up at the same time for everyone. And you had that 3-month lull in there. And to me, that is all going to come down to your strength and conditioning staff and the closeness they have with their players, the respect that the players have for them. And, Mickey Marotti is pretty much regarded across the country from college coaches I know as the best in the business. So I think when we first start back, I think your strength and conditioning people, their influence, I think, is going to be more felt strongly than what head coach and the assistant coaches will be. This is going to be a conditioning thing. So I think Ohio State is in great shape, mainly because of Mickey Marotti and his staff. And I don't know, Mark, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Certainly, that's going to be the initial task. That first few weeks is going to be getting everyone back in shape, getting everyone back into a routine. When I look at the roster, I think, especially on the offensive side of the ball, you look at some other top teams around the country, they're replacing a quarterback, they're replacing offensive linemen, they're replacing receivers. These are positions where reps matter, where cohesion matters, and they've lost that time. And yes, while everyone has lost that time to an extent, I look at Ohio State and I look at their offense, and that offensive line should be able to have a pretty quick learning curve there in terms of getting back into the groove. Justin Fields should have a pretty quick learning curve in terms of getting back into a groove with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. I look at that as a huge advantage early on when you've got teams across the country. You got Oregon's replacing their quarterback. They're replacing 4 offensive linemen. Alabama's replacing a quarterback. They're replacing receivers. They're replacing offensive linemen. Clemson's probably a pretty well situated team. I mean, that's another team I'd look at as a team that could probably get through this pretty well in terms of being able to pick right back up. But yeah, these teams that are losing quarterbacks, building new offensive lines, breaking in new receivers, I think those teams may be a little slow to get going. And I look at Ohio State, I think they're well equipped.
You know, it's interesting. We've talked to Mickey Marotti a couple times this year, including once since all of this happened and the players were all scattered to go back home. And it has been really interesting to hear him talk about what they've had to do to sort of figure things out for all of these guys. Because you've got guys who are home and probably have a pretty decent home gym, and then you've got guys who are home and have either literally nothing or almost nothing to work with in terms of traditional exercise equipment. I remember he talked about Matthew Jones, the offensive lineman from Brooklyn, New York. He had to fill milk jugs with dirt and use those as dumbbells. Nick Petit-Fur, the offensive lineman from Florida, was trying to do pull-ups on his gutters in his parents' house and rip down the gutters off the house. So they have really kind of had to try and make it work. But what's interesting about that is Ohio State has 5 strength and conditioning staff members who are, you know, trying to work with each of these guys individually and put together these customized plans. There are an awful lot of programs in FBS and even among some of the Power 5 schools that probably don't have that kind of resource to try and put this stuff together. You know, these kinds of specific programs for guys, these kinds of nutrition programs, that kind of stuff. You wonder if, in some ways, this might not be another area where schools like Ohio State or Alabama or Clemson or Georgia, schools like that have a lot of resources to throw at a problem like this, might not be able to even differentiate themselves a little more from some of the lower level schools who might, you know, you might just have 1 or 2 strength guys who have to kind of scramble and try and put things together. And that might be an issue, an area where Ohio State can kind of separate again from some of the lower level programs in the sport. We are typically going to be aiming to go about 15 to 20 minutes or so with these morning scoop shows, just to kind of give you the information you need to get your day started, and maybe you can listen on your commute on your way into work, and then be on with the rest of your day. Today we're going a little bit longer than normal, just to kind of give you a sense for some other things you can expect to find on the Buckeye Scoop podcast network. Tony Gerdeman and I have been doing the Buckeye Weekly podcast for about 3 years now. That will continue. We dropped our first show on Tuesday. We'll have another one that should drop today, and we'll be doing probably about 3 shows a week there. And I have sources that have indicated that the 2 gentlemen on this show with me today will have a show as well, Marc and Bill. So, Bill, can you just kind of give us a little bit of a sense what to expect with your show?
You know, that should be coming up real quick here on the agenda. You know, I think Marc and I are both thrilled to be able to do something like that together. And Marc has a few other ideas for podcasts too. When we get closer to the season, might be a little gambling info out there. We both kind of like to dabble into that line. So you could see a little Vegas knows information podcast coming, as well as the recruiting podcast. So we've got some great ideas for content upcoming. I think people are going to be pretty excited about things.
Yeah, we got a couple ideas. Here's what I'm excited about. We are a small family-owned business, essentially. We don't answer to anybody. We don't get direction from anybody in terms of our content. So we get to come up with our own ideas, and then we get to see how those ideas are received, and we get to take feedback from our viewership and our readers and our subscribers, and they get to have a hand in what they want to see more of, and we then can deliver that to them. So that's what I'm excited about here, is we can all do a kind of a trial by ear thing. Oh, that didn't go over as well, and let's do more of this. Let's do more podcasts. Let's do more bank blogs. Let's, whatever it is. And that's going to be, I think, a strength of our site, is we kind of have the ultimate freedom to adjust on the fly to what our viewers, our readers, our subscribers want.
Thank you guys both for joining us this morning on the very first edition of the Morning Scoop podcast. If you're interested in seeing more from Bill or Marc, or checking out the website, you can go to BuckeyeScoop.com. It's launching on Thursday, and you can check out the work there. You can sign up for membership. Probably worth at least taking a look today. Should be a pretty cool site. Pretty excited to get started with it. We will be back tomorrow for the Friday edition of Morning Scoop. We'll have Mick Walker on. Mick just wrapped up a pretty impressive trip through Southwest Ohio to visit with a number of Ohio State commits, and also some players being recruited in both football and basketball. We'll talk to him about all of that and who he talked to and what he learned, as well as the return of high school sports, sort of, with workouts returning in high school athletics. So that should be a fun conversation tomorrow. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow morning.